We are in a new generation, and that has caused us to look back a little bit, and today we thought, let's revel in the bad for a bit. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanx, the 10 worst PS4 games of all time. Starting off at number 10, it's Duck Dynasty, the game. Let's just say, wowie, Duck Dynasty, the game. I don't need to say anything else. However, this is the first of many games that have been delisted from the store that they were listed on. This one's probably delisted because the license expired. Like, you'd probably think this would be a hunting game like one of the Cabela games, but nope. And it looks like it would be like a redneck Grand Theft Auto. Also nope, it's really just a boring collection of minigames. The basic structure is you drive around from place to place in a pretty small area, might I add, and you do a minigame, mostly revolving around hunting ducks. And no one argues whether or not it's rabbit season with you. It's just that element should be there. How do you make this game and not make that joke? Also, duck hunting, you just point at a flock, you do a bird call QT, and then just blast away with really forgiving aim assistance, and that is it. That is all there is to it. It is easier than Duck Hunt. Duck Hunt is better. There's more dynamics to the 1984 Nintendo Entertainment System hit Duck Hunt. All this on top of being a Duck Dynasty game, which, like I said, depending on who you ask, that could make it the most unbearable game on this list, bar none. That's not to judge anybody who likes this type of stuff. It's to acknowledge the people who don't. At number 9 is Fast and Furious Crossroads, which I just want to go ahead and say is a full-priced freaking game. That's what I have to say right off. It looked all right before the release, but it is just dull, beyond dull. Driving is unresponsive, but also kind of too responsive. It just feels wrong. Like, it's inconsistent. Sometimes you're stuck to the ground. Sometimes you're flying all over the place. Sometimes buttons seem to do what they do much faster or slower. And the game is like super short. You can finish it in about 3 hours. It has like different kinds of gameplay too. There's car combat, there's burnout stuff, there's some more open section, and some frankly just really boring missions where you don't do a lot. On top of that, the camera isn't great. It can lose track of the car, and it can just be flat out really glitchy sometimes. It's not ideal. The game is not ideal. And for whatever reason, they decided to make the story focus on 2 new characters that they try to flesh out. But clearly the people who wrote the game don't know really how to be that riveting, because these characters are just wooden planks. They're very boring. Every single one of the actual Fast and Furious characters both look and sound like they do not want to be there. There are very long cutscenes that I could say the word boring again to describe, but I'm starting to feel like I'm saying it too much, despite the fact that it's applicable in every usage. And while like the one saving grace is the big heist set pieces, it's not because they're like amazing or anything. They're just good. And it's not like they're not messy and frustrating too. They're just vaguely worth playing. At number 8 is Godzilla. All right, this game is just seriously terrible. It's also delisted, probably for the same reasons Duck Dynasty is, the license expiring, but it's also the worst. You immediately notice how weird this game is to control. Godzilla has tank controls, which that makes sense. Also, he moves so incredibly slow. You only have a few moves that, again, are really slow to perform, and nothing feels satisfied to do. I just hate it. I remember this one probably more vividly than a lot of the other ones, because I bought it when it came out thinking, Godzilla game, that'd be great. It's not. The campaign is rough. You got all these random tiny stages where you have to destroy generators. It's told from the perspective of humans trying to defeat Godzilla, which is, I don't know, like the dialogue gets really repetitive really fast. The actual monster combat really doesn't feel better. It's like slow. There is no standard block button, and this is a game where you can easily get stun locked into oblivion against certain monsters. Also, it's ugly, terrible, just a terrible game. At number 7 is Wander, called by many as one of the worst games of the generation, if not the worst. This game's pretty much disappeared off the face of the internet as far as we know. It was really near impossible to get footage. It is a combat-free, massively multiplayer game, so you played as like a tree sometimes and explored environments with other players. It was, an ambitious idea, but it just fell completely flat. YouTube was flooded with videos showing how broken and buggy and awful the game is, and the apparent lack of gameplay also made it a target. Like, look at this trees walking animations in the trailer. It's just goofy. What is that? The whole thing seems more like a tech demo than an actual game, and that seems to basically be what it was. Like, I don't know if there's a lot more to say than that. At number 6 is Dawn of Fear, which is like basically a really low budget Resident Evil. The company that published it, it's so sweet, the irony. It was published by Good Game Publishing. That's the name of the company. So I guess if you say so, it feels a lot like a student game or work in progress. The writing is really stilted and awkward. The movement feels super janky, and it has fixed camera angles to mimic the pre-rendered backgrounds of old Resident Evil games, and it does not help. Puzzles are confusing, enemies are pathetic and easy to avoid, and there's so much backtracking without like any of the things that make backtracking good, like an interesting setting or anything like that. The most amusing thing is how the main guy kind of just seems to fidget around. Like, he doesn't have turning animations or anything, so there's no momentum to his movement. It's hard to describe, but just look at it. That doesn't look good. It's awkward, it's not very fun, and it feels like a beta rather than a finished game. At number 5 is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, which was one of the biggest disappointments of the generation. Pro Skater 5 was supposed to bring back the classic Tony Hawk games everyone loved, but it was a rushed and buggy mess. It looks basically like a PS2 game, maybe PS3 on a bad day. Skating is okay, but there's a weird ground slam button that just basically kills it, and it's mapped to the same button as grinding, and it will make you screw up combos constantly. It's got this internet HUD structure. It feels really pointless. There's no organic flow to the game. Interface is awkward, etc., etc. And the actual gameplay is just boring and repetitive. You do the same activities over and over. Like, it's a really stripped back Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game. It's toned down. They never really justify why it's toned down. It feels like a very basic version. But thankfully, you know what? We got the Pro Skater 1 and 2 remakes, and they're friggin' phenomenal. And number 4 is Ghostbusters 2016. No, not that Ghostbusters game. We're talking about the 2016 game vaguely based off the reboot movie. Like, it's another delisted game to add to the list. It's just so bad and forgettable, and no one's really trying to preserve it anywhere, as far as we know. It is not a forgotten classic. It is a 4-player co-op twin-stick shooter that is, somehow related to the reboot. Let me get into this one. Like, I don't care what your opinion on the reboot of the movie is, whether you like it, whether you dislike it. They don't even bother having the cast of the movie. It's just 4 nobodies. And these people just constantly just said the same crap over and over. There were one-liners that are not from any of the films. Not the new film, not the old films. It's just this tedious shooter that doesn't make any sense. Like, were they gonna make like some other Ghostbusters thing that this was gonna be related to? And then they decided to make the movie, or the other way around? Like, I don't know. It just does, it's baffling. I remember spending large amounts of time just trying to figure out what this game even was. On top of that, it was $50 at release. $50! And it looks like, at best, like a $20 C-list game. At number 3 is Agony, which was a game that looked promising before release, but it's actually just not fun. It's just this constant onslaught of gross stuff that gets really repetitive and never comes off particularly imaginative. Like, it's one of those hiding horror games like Outlast or Amnesia, but it's just nowhere nearly as innovative or clever. Most of the time, all you can really do is hide from demons, and if you die, you return to the soul form, and you have to find a new body to possess before time runs out and you die for real. To top it off, objectives, they're basically key hunts, and it's dark most of the time, and sometimes seeing is the main challenge. A lot of the time, it's almost impossible to hide because the areas are so small. Even if you do hide, enemies will just wander into you. As a positive, I guess a lot of the creature designs are pretty interesting, and there's some interesting visual tricks they pull off, but the biggest problem is the game isn't particularly scary, and it's also not really that interesting. It's just kind of a boring game that tries to be like really frightening and at no point manages it. And number 2 is Road Rage, which is not to be confused with the actually decent Road Redemption. With Road Rage, like right from the start, things did not look good for this one. There's text panning over shots of the city, that's the story, then the game just drops you into a race without any explanation, which feels bad. The driving immediately just feels bad. There's no like traction, there's no friction. It feels like you're controlling a damn hoverboard, not a motorcycle. You clip through objects that you're supposed to hit, you get stuck on stuff that seems like you should be able to break through. Like, it's just a mess. Combat is really unsatisfying as well. You press a button and you'll swing your weapon, and they couldn't even get the animation to look right. It has this weird stretching effect whenever you swing. It's pretty much the game too. You do a mission, you get a call, you do another mission, one after the other. It gets really repetitive fast, like really fast. Like, I didn't play this game for more than a half hour before I thought it was repetitive, like that fast. And the presentation is about as basic as you can get. I mean, you can at least still buy it, so the publisher is competent in that way, but not in many other ways. At number 1, finally, is Afro Samurai 2: Revenge of Kuma. So this one was actually so bad they pulled it from all the online marketplaces and canceled a planned second part. Like, it was probably like officially pulled for low sales and licensed music, but like, it was a bad game. And those are kind of ways of saying like, yeah, we know it's bad, we're just gonna stop. It has pretty much non-stop visual glitches. In the first 30 seconds of the game, the camera glitched out so badly I couldn't see what was going on. And this was in an empty white void. The controls are stiff, like combat's basically Arkham Asylum, but way worse. And the block button makes you stop completely for a second when you push it. The environments are barren and they look like just copy pasted. Like there's one or two assets they just littered all over the place. Which the game has you actually playing as Kuma, the dude with the bare hand, rather than, you know, Afro Samurai, which weird choice. Also, this game has one of the worst looking QTE moments I have ever seen. Every frame of it just looks terrible. And you add in the fact that the guy you're apparently fighting is talking nonstop over it, like there is nothing going on. It's trash. It's a disaster. I mean, there's one redemptive aspect to it is he starts screaming "my eyes" when you poke his eyes out. And it's really goofy looking and sounding, and it did make me laugh. However, that is not an intended effect. So, yeah. Couple of bonus games for you. The Life of Black Tiger, which is just this completely unfinished game. I don't know why it was on the PlayStation Store. Nobody should have like seen that and been like, all right, yeah, let that on. It was delisted after literally like a backlash. I mean, look at it. This barely qualifies as a game. And then this one is maybe less of a problem in concept. It's Alekine's gun, like Hitman during WW2 and the Cold War. Like, that's a great idea, but the developers just couldn't pull it off. It's got bad graphics for 2016, and the frame rate is, well, worse than the graphics. It's also confusing, glitchy, especially with the artificial intelligence and the voice acting. It's funny. Again, at least it's funny. Finally, Super Street the game. Like, it looks okay for a budget racer, but yeah, the controls, they're bad. They're horrible. The AI is just embarrassing as well. Either they have a death wish or they're master racers with nothing in between. Like, I can't stress how hard it is to control. The faster the car is, the more uncontrollable it is. It's just a game that after you do the thing you're supposed to do, which is go fast, you lose all ability to play the game. That's all we've got for today, though. What do you think? Leave us a comment and let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.